Welcome on into OneSoccer today. Andy Petrillo, Oliver Platt, Gareth Wheeler with you as per usual, but pleased to have Alex Gange-Ruzic join us, editor-in-chief Between the Sticks. It's so nice to have another voice, as much as I love my guys and what they have to say, which of course we will be hearing more of their pearls of wisdom as the show progresses. But I do want to begin with you, Alex, because this is a topic that you know well. Let's talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps and their goalkeeper situation. We know that Max Kripo, no longer there. He's with LA. We also know that they've re-signed Isaac Boehmer. But what do you make of the goalkeeping situation with the Whitecaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question to lead off. Obviously, the losing Max Kripo is a big blow. There's no way about it. Obviously, last year, you look at the late playoff push, you look at some of the factors behind it, the coaching change, bringing in Ryan Gauld, Brian White's heater, all that was great, but that doesn't happen without Max Kripo's play in the first half of the season. It doesn't happen with his play in the second half of the season. There was some games where he single-handedly saved the Whitecaps, and I think not having him on the team, it's a big blow. He was one of the best goalkeepers in MLS by most common metrics, by most advanced metrics. It was obviously not something you wanted to deal with, but with Thomas Hasal, I think he has a very high ceiling. He has a very good a lot of scouts say apparently he's got a very European ready body style. He's tall, he's lanky, he's going to be good in the long term, but he's just 22. It's going to be a question of how ready is he for a full MLS season. Mm-hmm. So I'd say certainly long term, I'm confident in the Whitecaps goalkeeping situation. I think someone like Thomas Hasal at 22, he's already ahead of where someone like Max Kripo was at 24. But for the Vancouver Whitecaps, they want to be a team that makes the playoffs again. I think it's a big risk to have someone like Thomas Hasal start the season. So from what it sounds like, they're bringing in a backup goalkeeper. There's one currently on trial. Andre Rawls is a former USL Championship goalkeeper. Sounds like they're going for experience to kind of push Hasal, but it's certainly a big risk heading into the season, although I'm confident of what Hasal can bring in the long term.
Yeah, I don't like it for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Kripo's he's not only a leader in this team, he's one of the better players in the side. Just to hand things off to a young goalkeeper and throw him to the wolves, no matter how promising he may be, I'm just not sure if it sets him up for success when the expectation is to go on and make the playoffs again. This is a complete teardown, a rebuild, and you want to give a young goalkeeper an opportunity, then so be it. This is not the case in Vancouver. And most problematic of it all was Max Kripo's comments about wanting to go to a club that aspires to win something. This is a direct shot at the Vancouver Whitecaps and the limitation of that squad and where this team is right now. For me, that is more alarming than Hasal coming in alone. The comments by Kripo, that sets off alarm bells. And I'd be asking a lot of questions about, is this the predominant sentiment amongst the group, or are they galvanized, and do they believe that Kripo might be the exception and not the rule?
Yeah, what Kripo has kind of had to say about, it was more talking about, I think, LAFC, but you naturally kind of thought that what he was saying about LAFC was by omission what was not there at the Whitecaps, right, which was kind of concerning. So we'll see on that front, but I just think the Hasal situation is kind of like a microcosm of how I feel about this team generally, which is I'm waiting to find out if like really good signs in the past in a small sample size are real, right? And are going to carry through to this season. So we all remember what Hasal did at MLS's back. And, that was really exciting and really good for a young player to come into the league and play like that. But it was just a short spurt, right? So can he now do it over a full season, albeit 18 months older. So, you would think his game has progressed. And then the same thing for the whole team. The way they played in the back end of last season, tons of momentum, really exciting. Going into the playoffs, Vanni Sartini comes in and gets the team going, gets the city excited about the team again. But is it going to carry through? Is that momentum still going to be there and going into a fresh season? And is it going to translate into something solid in the long term? Those are questions that I don't really know the answer to right now with the Whitecaps. I think the roster looks decent, but I think there's still plenty of questions to be answered as well.
Well, and Ollie, you had made, you just pointed out as well that out of the 3 Canadian MLS teams, the Vancouver Whitecaps have had the quietest offseason so far. They did just acquire defensive midfielder Sebastian Berhalter from the Columbus Crew. What do you make of that addition, and which other ones would you like to see?
Yeah, that strikes me as more of a depth addition. I think what it seems like they're looking to do is rely on things internally that are already there that are going to be better than they were last season. So there's players coming back from injury like Kyle Alexandre, Eric Godoy, who would fit into that category. Pedro Vite, obviously, is basically a new signing, having not really played after joining last season. So there's things internally in the group which almost fit the description of new signings. And I think that's where they're hoping the injection of, kind of freshness will come from. But at the same time, it's been a little strange to see them not do more than Berhalter and Tristan Blackman, given, again, they were coming off a end to last season, which was so positive. You would think that maybe that they would want to build on that a little bit more. There's still a spot open for a young designated player, which they haven't yet used. So it's been an interesting one. I thought they would have, as I said, I thought they would have done a bit more by now. But I can also kind of see the thinking that after a couple of years of tons of changes, let's have some continuity and let's get the best out of players that maybe for various reasons we didn't see so much of last season. Give them a chance now as well.
Mm-hmm. Alex, what moves do you want to see them make?
No, for sure. I think if you're looking at the roster, like Ollie mentions, the young DP is a big question mark. The way they've structured their signings, they've got their 2 DPs, they've got the 3 young money players, they've got that spot open. I'd like to see them use it. Looking at their roster, they're quite busy up front. You look, maybe they could use some wing back depth. For me, I'd like to see that signing made in the heart of midfield. You got Kyle Alexandre, like Ollie mentions, he's kind of coming back almost like a new signing. He was excellent in the 16 games I think he ended up playing last year. He brought something new to the Whitecaps midfield. He didn't actually get to play under Vanni Sartini, which is something I'm keeping an eye on, because the way Vanni Sartini was playing with very active number 8s, box-to-box number 8s, that suits Kyle Alexandre's game nearly perfectly. He's a great off-the-ball runner. He likes having the ball in possession and just making those end-to-end runs. So I'm excited to see what he can bring. But what is the position going to look like alongside him? Can someone, who's it going to be starting beside him? Russell Tybert looked fantastic at the end of last year. I don't think anyone expected that, but is he going to keep that up? Can he, handle the pressure of being on a team that now is going to have expectations? Leonard Owusu also looked great last year, but he still has a lot more to prove. So I think you look at the 2 guys who could start beside Alexandre. You're okay starting the season with Russell Tybert, Leonard Owusu fighting for a spot beside Alexandre. But if you want to look at the roster right now, other than goalkeeper, obviously with this latest move, the center back position's pretty set. You bring in Florian Jungwirth last year. He was a great move that he fit great in the locker room. Everyone liked what he brought on the field, the leadership. You brought in Tristan Blackman, which is kind of a sneaky, good depth signing, with a lot more upside. Maybe other than your fullback, you'd really want to upgrade the heart of the midfield, because I think that will really impact how the team plays. If you can kind of get that link between, okay, you're a good defensive team, you want to be a team that gets the ball in the net, it all falls apart in the midfield. And we've seen that from past Whitecaps teams where they've loaded up on strong defenders and strong attackers, and the midfield just was kind of the straw that broke the metaphorical house. So I think definitely for me, the heart of the midfield is somewhere they need addressing. And I think the Sebastian Berhalter trade was a nice start, but I'd like to see some more quality there.
Yeah. The wing back position's problematic. I'll keep this short here. I think the team, the squad as is good, not great. I think they need upgrades over the players that they actually have, but that's not going to happen. Like, you're relying upon Brian White's going to be a great case study, right? A player that kind of rode that wave at the end of the year, scored a lot of very good goals, was highly productive. Does he have it in him to go back to back? I mean, if the answer is yes, then a lot of the issues up top are solved. I have no doubt about Ryan Gauld. Like, I love Gauld. Like, man, like, this guy is perfect for that market, perfect for that team. You need more players like him in that group. I just look around the squad, even the starting 11, there's a lot of average or good for me and not a lot of great. That's why this team, I think, is built to win a few years ago in Major League Soccer, but unfortunately the league has got better. And now it just kind of looks like kind of a team that's going to be competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and Wheels, we know Herdman's not going to take anyone to Qatar who isn't great. So when it comes to Lucas Cavallini, who for the Whitecaps' sake needs to get his game back, he had 3 goals last year. What do you want to see from him? What do you think Herdman needs to see from him to put him on that roster at the end of the summer to say he's going to Qatar?
Well, I think he has a leg up in the race for a spot going to Qatar based upon the fact that he's been there, done that before. Like Herdman knows what to expect from a player like Cavallini. Like there's a familiarity there. He works with the rest of the squad, so he has a leg up. The one comment that was made, in Vancouver as well as in the Canada camp is that he's much more fit. He looks like in a lot better shape this year than he was a year ago. That's a step in the right direction. My question, and Alex can probably answer this better than anyone, are the Whitecaps built to take advantage of his skill set? Like they seem very much a team that's kind of built to have quick players that can get out and really do a job on the counterattack, stick in that robust system. Is Cavallini the player that's going to be chasing the game, is going to be like leading some kind of press from the front? Like, is he the right fit for this Whitecaps team? I'm not quite sure it's an absolute match. That's not to say it can't work, because I think that he still is the best source of goals in this Whitecaps team that they have right now.
What do you think, Alex?
I think it's a wild card. I think if you're the Whitecaps, you look at kind of their roster, you have, you look at what they're able to accomplish last year. The fact that Lucas Cavallini just wasn't really that good in the second half, even in a secondary role, you wonder what can he do? He's a DP striker for a reason. You paid $5 million to bring him in. He has 9 goals in 2 seasons. Just Brian White in half a season on a heater, he surpassed that with his 12 goals. So I think if you're looking at Lucas Cavallini, to kind of talk about the play style, I think he can fit the style. You look at what Brian White did last year. What were most of his goals? They were, headers in the box. They were him making late runs, kind of getting on the end of cutbacks, linking up with Ryan Gauld. You look at Lucas Cavallini back in Mexico, that was how a lot of his goals were scored. He'd kind of, thrive on getting those headed goals, those cutbacks, playing off of a number 10, making that run in behind. If he can find some magic with Ryan Gauld, who knows where his production is going to go. So I think there's a fit with Lucas Cavallini in this team. The question is, what happens with him and Brian White? Do they have to play together? Does one end up getting benched for the other? I think just right now for Lucas Cavallini, the one thing I want to see for him to start the season is just to find his form. The one thing that really hurt him last year is how stop-start it was. His last goal for club or country was on July 4th of last year. Like that's going to mess with the striker's head, especially a guy like Lucas Cavallini. He's a guy who's always been a streaky scorer in Mexico. He'd go on, runs where he'd score 5 goals in 5 games and then go silent. I think he needs a goal because he fits this team. And I think if he can link up with Ryan Gauld, there can be magic, but that's a lot of ifs. And for a player of his stature, a player making who they paid that much to bring in, and he's one of the highest earners on the team, he's going to have to find a way to make it work. And for what like you mentioned, I think in Vancouver, there's, you have to be happy about how he turned up to preseason. Even his short cameo with Canada, there was some promise there. The question is, can he just put it together on the pitch? Because for whatever reason, no matter what's happened, he just hasn't had that moment in Vancouver, and he just needs to find it and then take it, go from there. And like you mentioned with John Herdman, he looks to have a leg up for what he brings off the bench, but it would be nice to have an informed Lucas Cavallini there and not, just dragging himself into the roster.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I agree with everything Alex says in terms of his situation in Vancouver, but I think in terms of the World Cup squads, that there will always be an open door there for Cavallini if he's in form and if he's well. Because firstly, as Bills and both of you guys mentioned, he has the history with the team. But I also don't think they have another striker like him, right? Like they have David and Larin, who are, very good all-round number 9s, can link the game very well and score goals. You've got penalty area poachers and Akinola and Ugbo. They don't have anyone else who's that real physical presence, plays with his back to goal, can allow the team to be a bit more direct maybe at times. I think there's a place for him because of those traits in the Canada squad. But he has to be playing well and in form.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, gentlemen, about the latest FIFA rankings that came out. And Alex, I'm going to come to you because I know the guys are going to want to bite into this topic. But a question I've asked them multiple times. So again, this is the new voice coming on in. So they're ranked 33rd now in the world. That is the highest ever ranking for this Canadian squad. What do you think makes them special since you've been watching them play in this last year, qualifying, working their way towards qualifying for Qatar?
It's a great question. I think to start, there's obviously a lot of the intangibles that are always talked about, the roster makeup, that kind of, the brotherhood that we always talk about. You hear that a lot from all sports teams, so you kind of just laugh it off, but then you actually see it in reality. But for me, one thing that I've specifically liked a lot has been their tactical flexibility. I think that's been a big asset for them, how they've been able to adapt. And it's unique. You look at national team football across the world, teams love to have an identity. When you mention most teams' names, you snap your fingers, you know what you expect. With Canada, they don't have that, but they almost thrive. You look at their latest 6-game win streak. I don't think they've won the same way with the same formation twice in a row on that streak. So for me, the one thing that I've been most impressed with has been that tactical versatility, because at first you see like, what are they doing? They don't have an identity. What's the point? But I think it makes a big difference when they're able to execute at a high level like they've been.
Yeah, and what a luxury for Herdman, right? Because give credit where credit's due in a coach who's able to read the situation, know the opponents. But at the end of the day, you have to have the players who have the ability to adapt and the ability to change. So it's been also a great luxury for him. Do you think the rankings are accurate, Ollie? Like, do you think it's where Canada should be? Are they actually a 33rd ranked team in the world? Do you think they should be higher?
I think the FIFA World Rankings are questionable most of the time. Like, I don't think they're an exact science by any means. And there's teams you can pick out in there, and you wonder like, how exactly did this team get there? But I think the relevance of it to Canada isn't necessarily the specific position, right? I know that's important in terms of what pot we're going to go into for the World Cup draw, but it's more just the overall growth and trend, right? Like, this is a team that I was looking back this morning. After 8-1 in Honduras, like, the team went into complete freefall, ended up 122nd in the world, right? Like, surrounded by tiny countries and, countries that have nowhere near the resources that Canada has for soccer. So the climb since then has been something that, I couldn't say if there's ever been a national team that's climbed this far this quickly, but I would imagine, Canada is right up there in terms of the biggest difference in a 10-year periods that we've ever seen in international soccer. So that for me is the story, is kind of the longer term trend and the turnaround of this team, rather than getting into the specifics of exactly where they deserve to be in these rankings.
I can't tell you. Well, I can tell you. Well, however long I've been in this industry, Andy, it's been a long time now. Every time the FIFA rankings used to come out, everyone scoff at it. Oh, this is a joke. Why is this country at? Like, no one. The focus that this country is now putting on the FIFA rankings is absolutely over the top and quite ridiculous.
They look good.
Although you can pump out your chest for the first time and say, yeah, look at that. We're climbing. But it's just the way the team has shown resolve and found ways to win games. And sometimes when they haven't played at their best. I mean, this is completely flipping the script of the way that things used to be. And now people are getting way ahead of themselves. Oh, pot 3, pot 4. Can't we just sit back and watch this play out?
No.
Like, do people not understand how the FIFA World Cup draw? Like, you could be in pot 2, you could be in pot 1, and you might have a crap draw, right? Like, just take
you
a
might,
breath.
but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
You got to buy a ticket to the lottery.
But at the
Exactly.
same time, do you know who was in pot 3 at the last World Cup? Iceland, Tunisia, Iran. Like, these aren't world beaters in pot 3 either. Pot 4, you had Japan, who went on and qualified from the group. So there's different variables at play here. Let's just see how this plays out. Like, my God, can we qualify for a World Cup first and then actually see what the pots look like before we start plotting out our path to world supremacy? It's absolutely insane. It's like one thing at a time. We haven't been there since 1986. We're like, oh yeah, we need to get pot 3. I don't know if it's going to even make a hell of a difference. So let's take a breath here. 33. Sit back and enjoy it. This
Who
is kind of
invited the
evolution of
grandpa?
Chuck. Well, I'm trying to provide some, like, everyone's so excited. Oh my God! Like, just take a breath. We're okay.
Don't be that dude in the corner with the beer who's just grumbling about everything and like,
Andy, the same people that are getting excited about pot 3. Hey, Wheeler, why are you so excited on your match calls of the game? Well, what do you want it? Like, you can't have it both ways. Let's take it easy when it comes to seeding. Get excited about the team and everything that's happened. But pot 3, pot 4, it doesn't matter right now.
Okay, I have one question, one itty bitty question to put a bow on the Canadian men's national team for you, Wheels. If we could possibly see a surprise roster addition. They have to submit, I believe it's the end of the summer, right? Because as we know, this World Cup being held in Qatar in the heat, it's actually been moved to November. Reminder to people out there who possibly forgot that. We'll be having like a nice little Thanksgiving in October, American Thanksgiving, November, and then off to Christmas with the World Cup mixed in between. I'm really excited for the fall and winter. But could there be a surprise roster addition?
I'm going to preface this by saying it's far too early to tell. Like, I'm not sure right now what a surprise addition would be. Would it be a player that's already played, just minimal, or a new player to the setup altogether? Like, I'm not sure which one of these dual nationals may commit. I'm not sure which one is ready to step up into the Canadian men's national team picture right now. Like, Jebison was scoring at third division of English football. Like there's other players that are playing at a higher level right now.
There's nothing wrong with the third division.
Often, yeah, but there are players that are playing in the league championship or not. Jebison wasn't in the Sheffield United. All I'm saying is that let's be honest about some of the players in the level, and just because they're playing somewhere abroad doesn't mean that it's of a level that really catches the eye of the Canadian men's national team. But one player I think is working his way into the mix. I think if he was fit right now, he would be playing. Is potentially a Ralph Priso of Toronto FC. The central midfielder, I know he's caught the eye of his club coaches before. I know he's on the radar for the Canadian men's national team. Central midfield's an area where I think that you could, maybe use some younger legs and maybe a different profile player that can come in and play that position. Priso's been to Canada camps before. He's trained last January with Herdman and company. So Priso would be a name, and I think that it would be a little bit of a surprise to many on the outside looking in.
I thought you were going to go Marcelo Flores. I thought you were going to blow us all away with something.
No one knows if he's going to commit to, you can't say it's going to be we're not sure where his international future is going to lay. I've documented this so many times. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I think that if everything's created equal, he chooses Mexico. But that doesn't mean that Canada's out of the mix. So yeah, that would be a surprise addition, and nothing that I've been told has changed anything on that front. So we're gonna have to wait and see how that plays out.
Ollie, you look like you're biting your tongue. Did you want to say something?
Oh no.
You're good.
I was just enjoying Gareth there.
That's just the smirk you give whenever Wheels is talking. All right, let's turn our attention.
Who's your surprise? Who's your surprise, Ollie?
I actually like the Ralph Priso shout, and recent readers of my World Cup squad projection article will notice that I had him on my list of potential wildcards. I think he is. We need to see more of Jaquil Marshall-Rutty because obviously he's got a lot of hype around him and clearly a lot of talent. But for me, when you talk about who I think is the best prospect to come out of Toronto FC's academy over the past few years, I think Ralph Priso might be top of that list. I think he is a real player and he could become a regular starter for them pretty quickly.
See that? Ollie's sucking up to me. He's got the Rooney bicycle kick in the background too. Ollie, my boy.
Oh dear. We're not talking Man United this show. We're going to, in fact, go to the Canadian Premier League and talk Pacific FC because they have signed former defenseman of Edmonton. That would be Amir Diddig, speaking of someone who got a call into camp. Do you think, Alex, that this fills a void for Lucas McNaughton, who's been signed by Toronto FC?
I think this fills his spot perfectly. Amir Diddig has always been one of the better, if not one of the best center backs in the CPL over the last few years. Back when he trialed with the Whitecaps, I always thought that would have been a good fit. Obviously, things didn't work out there. He went back to Edmonton. It always felt like he could move on to a bigger level. So I guess while this might not be that step up, he is getting, into his late 20s. Who knows if that offer will ever materialize. This specific team within the league is a good spot for him. They have the space open for him. Obviously, with McNaughton leaving, they're going to make that CONCACAF league run later in the year. They lost a few important pieces off their roster. He can play with the ball at his feet. He's tall. He's commanding in the air. He kind of fills a lot of those same attributes that McNaughton brought to the table. I think this is a perfect fit for a Pacific team that is going to need to make moves like this if they're to send a message that they're not too worried about some of the players they lost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the quality of the players they have lost, I think Pacific's in good shape. Given to lose that much talent, you would think that would really put a dent in a team. But at the same time, like Terran Campbell wasn't starting for Pacific at the start of last season, and obviously Bustos is going to come back. It looks like he's going to come back and be a Pacific player next season, so that's kind of your direct replacement there. But Jabrapor, same thing with Baldissimo, who was one of the best sixes in the league in 2020. Diddig now replaces McNaughton, and if Caden Chung goes to TFC or elsewhere as well, I think Kunle Dadaluk is a player who is more than ready to start for this team. So yes, of course, they're going to need to add depth and fill that squad out. But I think in terms of the players they've lost, they're actually in a decent situation in terms of how they can replace those bodies and the quality that they had.
I told you no player is irreplaceable in the Canadian Premier League, but this for me goes down as the best signing so far this offseason. I can't wait to see what Diddig looks like in a good team. Like, honestly, he's played in like the worst team in the Canadian Premier League the last 3 years, and this is a player that was with the Canadian men's national team. So clearly his quality. I can't wait to see like him playing on a Pacific team that loves to have the ball, loves to be on the front foot, is going to ease the pressure on him incredibly. I just think that this is a perfect signing for this team right now. And look out, don't sleep on Pacific, being right in the mix to go back to back. This team has players, some very good players. And I don't see them going, taking a step back. I think this team could actually take a step forward.
Well, the fire sale continues with Edmonton wheels because winger Fraser Aird has signed with Cavalry. What do you make of that for Tommy and company?
Another experienced player to come into that team. Again, it's slow and steady wins the race. I still think that Cavalry needs something a little bit more in attack, another goal scorer, but another important piece. And man, I just look at this Cavalry team thinking to myself, they're going to be a pain in the ass to play, right? Like, because they have some physicality, they're tough, they're difficult. It's going to be a little bit of a brawl each and every time that you go in and play Cavalry. So I think they're sticking with their identity, which is a good thing.
Alex, what do you make of that signing?
I think it's a great signing for Cavalry. From what I saw, again, like we said, with Amir Diddig being a good player on a bad team, I thought Fraser Aird, he showed more than I thought he was going to show for Edmonton last year. He's quite versatile, sometimes playing in the wing, playing centrally, which I wasn't expecting, but he also showed well. So I think in Cavalry's flexible system under Tommy Wheeldon Jr., the fact that their wingers aren't really wingers, there could be a fit in that front three if he comes out and plays like he did last year. So I think it's an intriguing move. It kind of fits Tommy Wheeldon Jr.'s system. And if he can get the most out of him, it could be Fraser Aird has always been a kind of boomer bust player. So if you can get him on that boom side of the scale, it can always be a good move for both parties.
Well, Cavalry needs a boom season, that's for sure. They're perennial contenders. We're always choosing them. And, for a team that has already gone into the history books in the CPL as far as being the first winners of that spring campaign and then being the first CPL team to defeat an MLS side in a two-legged affair in the Canadian Championship, there's no trophies really there, right? But
wheels
when it comes
up, wheels down,
yeah, there's a wheels up and then there's a wheels down. But let me ask you this, Ollie, because when it comes to Edmonton, all right. So Connor James is gone, Alan Zebby is gone, Easton Ungaro's gone,
everyone's gone.
When they send a press release out saying
the owners are gone.
Yeah, exactly. The owners are gone. Here's who's on the team. And it's like a one sentence, that's it of who's on the team for next season. I mean, do they have anybody, Ollie, who can play? I mean, they have to hustle here before the season starts in a couple months.
Well, yeah, like they re-signed Faia and Marissa Anwar yesterday or a couple of days ago. And that's it. They're the only two players coming back from 2021. The rest of the roster is going to be completely new players. So like I said on yesterday's show, I don't know exactly what this will look like yet. Hoping to speak to some people in Edmonton over the next couple of days and try and figure that out. But I do think, or I've heard at least, that the ownership situation and the fact that the league does currently effectively own the club is going to have an effect on how this roster is built. What kind of money is there to spend, where they get to in the salary cap and all of these things. So I think this is going to be a difficult year. But again, you just have to look ahead to the future and start to lay a foundation for 2023, 2024.
All right. Well, it's another fantastic show in the books here. Ollie, Gareth, it's a pleasure as always. Alex Gange-Ruzic, editor-in-chief Between the Sticks. It was great having you on board. Some great insight. I really appreciate it. Talking a lot Vancouver Whitecaps, Pacific, and of course the Canadian men who reach an all-time high FIFA ranking of 33. Although Gareth says stop talking about pots 3 and pots 4 when it comes to World Cup. So we will stop doing that.
Stir the pot. Leave pot 3 and pot 4.
But we might be talking about those pots at the end of March. I'm Annie Petrillo. You've been watching OneSoccer.ca. We'll check in with you next time.